reporter Tumaole Mohlaoli. Tumaole, I'm very confused. I mean, we all heard the statements yesterday. You spoke to the leader this morning. What did he say to you? I'm sure this must be very confusing now to the public.
Well, certainly very confusing to the media contingent that was there, yes, and to the public at large. You know, it seems as if Julius Malema doing an about turn and trying to be very smart in how he phrases his words. You would hear there that he said the media houses are not welcome, but the journalists are, of course, EFF friends, and some of them are EFF supporters. You know, and I think, you know, thinking about it and looking at the context, the broader context, it is an elective year. And of course, the EFF would do well not to isolate itself and make enemies, if you will, of media representatives, because they have to get their message out across. It's all part of the campaigning process. And I think in hindsight and in retrospect, Mr. Malema must have realized that perhaps we went a step too far there. And this is why you find this very contradictory statement coming out. This is certainly the sense that many of the media that were there got.
Look, how has this about turn now been received by all quarters? Do you know if there's been a response from Sanef now?
Yes, there has been a response from Sanef. Sanef still maintains that it is very disturbed about the statements as they came out initially. They have, however, said that, you know, looking at the response since then and Mr. Malema's subsequent statements, there is a meeting that has been set aside for both parties to come and try and thresh out their differences, because Sanef is still of the view that journalists cannot be intimidated, that we live in a country where constitutionally the right of freedom of expression is enshrined and protected. And therefore, when you start making statements like that, it creates a very negative impression and get a negative environment, because going into an elective year, the temperature tends to rise up a bit. So you don't want a situation where journalists are intimidated and sometimes even attacked because party members whom perhaps even the leader has no control over might decide, well, this is a media that is criticizing us and making us lose votes. So you don't want a situation where you create havoc.
Look, Tumaole, when we spoke earlier on, you said to me that Malema did say that the journalists can come in their own personal capacity. But then on which platform would they report if they do come from the Gupta Owned entities then?
Well, this is the contradiction there, and it's very perplexing. Because a journalist, by definition, would then be representing, whether freelancing
a media
or not,
house.
A media house. That is how perhaps journalists also get access to very many events or very many briefings. You can't just walk in there as just old Joe Soap from the street and say, I'm a journalist and I'm going to cover this particular press conference. You have to present your credentials. So it creates a very weird grey area. And this is why I say a lot of the media out there and some of the commentators I spoke to feel that perhaps he's trying to shift the idea a bit and say, look, I'm targeting the Gupta-linked entities as such and not the particular journalists. But then again, like you raised so rightly, what capacity do they come in if they're not sent by a media house?
Look, Mboiseni was invited on our show yesterday on the road with Vuyo, and he was still sticking to Malema's statements today. So what should then the public believe now? Today's statements or what?
Well, I think the public should just go with what they read into the broader sense of what is actually going on. Because, you know, it's coming straight from Julius Malema's mouth today to say that journalists are our friends. And as far as he's concerned, he has no particular issue with individual journalists. But then again, as you
individual.
Yes. In what capacity does an individual get a platform? Unless, of course, they're a blogger or you've got a lot of new age media happening. So in that context, he's particularly right. But if you look at big corporations, and again, you know, particularly naming them directly, is a bit of a problem, because these are multinationals. You know, they play on the national media landscape, and so what then becomes the root of the issue? Do you ban them wholesale? And what about the journalists that work for them if they want to come in and cover a story? So it's a grey area, and I think he was playing party politics, and I don't think it held.
Look, very quickly, Tumaole, we've got like 30 seconds. Did you speak to the leader about, does he see any effects on the EFF's campaign now in regards to his latest statements? Well,
no. He doesn't see any effect on the EFF's campaign going forward. And in fact, he was very adamant that the EFF is focused, fully focused on ensuring that they roll out their campaign machinery, and they're looking to make history, in his own words. And interestingly enough, though, with the State of the Nation coming up, he did mention that they're going to disrupt Parliament. So more of the same we can expect, very consistent.
Did he give you any explanation as to how they'll disrupt?
They just said they will not give the President a platform to speak. So we can expect more of the same scenes that we've been seeing playing out in Parliament whenever the EFF go at it with number one, the President, Mr. Jacob Zuma. President Jacob Zuma.
Thank you so much for your time here on News Today. That is our journalist, and he did speak to Mr. Julius Malema earlier on today. It was Tumaole Mohlaoli.